Thank you, Madam President and members. I just want to make some comments about we're in a crisis. Why are we in a crisis? Why are we in a crisis? Because everybody talks about climate change. Climate change is not the answer. It's the problem. Maybe I should just break this down a little bit and put it maybe in some terms that maybe those of us who farm understand. You don't just throw seed on the ground and get a crop. You actually have to till the land, make it smooth, water the crop, weed the crop, fertilize the crop before you get a harvest. Before we can go to a full system of electricity, we must figure out how are we going to get there. And if there's one thing I've harped about in this building is that we set targets, and then we say by this date we're going to do a certain thing. It was AB 32, we're going to get to 20, by 2020 we're going to get 20% reduction, which we achieved. And now we have by 2035 and by 2050, and we're going to do all these things. But nobody put in the process how we're going to get there. The governor did an executive order last year saying we're going to get, by 2035, we're going to have no more combustible engines available for sale in California because you're going to not eliminate them, but we're not going to have them for sale. Now, how are we going to get there, Mr. Governor? We don't have an electric grid or a generation grid that can even sustain what we're doing right now. That's why this bill's here, is because we have set targets and stopped using fossil fuels. Now, look, I don't have a dog in the fight. I would love to drive electric cars and breathe clean air. I'm all for it. I'd also like to have an electric tractor, but today we're not going to have one of those. And we're not going to fly a plane that's electric. And there's a lot of things we're not going to do that's electric, and we need to recognize that. We don't recognize that, and we're in this crisis because we put ourselves in this crisis because we didn't plan. And at the same time, we feel good about passing these pieces of legislation, do a victory lap, throw a bunch of money at it. At the same time, what are we doing? Great article yesterday in Bloomberg about what's happening in Ecuador. You ought to read the article. I sent it to my good friend who's the chair of EQ. Oil spewing out of a pipeline in Ecuador, running into the river before the river that it got to the Amazon River. The indigenous people are irate. Their subsidence of their land in the Amazon forest is subsiding because they're pumping 500,000 barrels a day out of that Amazon rainforest. 50% of their oil comes to this state of California today. Now, we're feeling really great about all the things we're doing to save the planet here, and what are we really doing? We're just importing oil from Ecuador, ruining the Amazon rainforest right here in California. As we sit on 1,200 wells at the desk of CalGen, or the governor's desk, waiting for permits where we can drill for oil more safe, more environmentally friendly than anywhere in the world, until we get to a system where we're on electricity. This bill is going to allow the governor and DWR and the CEC to bypass local control. That's what this bill does. Make no mistake about it. Do we need transmission? Absolutely. I've been asking for transmission so we can get power from places like the senator from Bakersfield to the places where we need it and other places. We need that. We can drive down our carbon footprint by just building power lines. So we're not making Californians pay $1 billion a year to export power to other states because we can't get it from point A to point B in our own state. You know, it's frustrating. In 2012, when I first came to the assembly, I talked about wildfire. And I said, our forests are going to burn if we don't do something immediately. 2 years later, our forests were burning, and we see them burn every year. But by God, we're going to do a great job of regulating combustible engines, lawn mowers, weed eaters, generators. All those things are going to be exempt in California, and we're not doing anything to take care of the forest. I'm going to oppose this bill because I think it's unnecessary and it's not put together in a way that we need to. What do we need to do? The governor, when the power goes out this summer, because it's going to go out, and we know it's going to go out, and that's what this bill's about. So he can do it a state of emergency, and he can turn on every power plant that's available. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be enough, because we haven't planned for the long, hard things that we need to plan for in California. This bill is going to allow the governor, the DWR, and the CEC to have a lot of power over our communities. They're going to site them, and they're going to build them wherever they want, and they're going to be the kind that they want. Not what's good for the Californians, but what's good for the environmental community that talks a talk, but would rather just mess another country up instead of fixing our own right here. Why don't we do the real tough decisions that need to be made here? Why don't we sit down, look at our grid, look at where we need power, and build power plants and transition into an economy and a lifestyle where we can actually have those electric vehicles, and where we can't, let's acknowledge the fact that we can't. And allow those people to use combustible engines to actually make Californians be able to afford to live in California. Members, the cost of living is going to skyrocket, the cost of electricity is going to skyrocket, and the cost of diesel fuel and gasoline is going to skyrocket in California until we do some serious planning for the future, for the next generations of Californians. Because this generation is getting punished by the laws and policies that come out of here. I urge a no vote on this, and I ask that we go back to the drawing board and do what's right for the long-term, sustainable way of making California the leader in climate adaptation, not just pushing our pollution off to some other country or some other state.